Our discussion today is sponsored by the Electronic Security Distributors Association, or ESDA for short. ESDA, its members are made up of people who import, distribute, and manufacture products in South Africa or Africa. And well, they're excluded from installing, so they're the distributors of security-related products. And the mission of ESDA is to obviously protect the interests of its members and represent them in legislation and things like that, and also to keep up a sort of a high standard of quality in the distribution market, try and avoid fly-by-nights and keep service levels going. And the chair of ESDA asked me to tell everyone that it's had been a rather quiet year for ESDA. Well, I suppose it's a quiet 18 months since the first lockdown. So it's usual days like its Golf Day and its exhibitions in South Africa and Botswana, and I think it does an exhibition in Namibia as well, have all been cancelled due to COVID. But David, who's the chair, says that the ESDA is 32 years old this year, and it remains committed to all its principles and encouraging and protecting the interests of its members and encouraging a high ethical standard of conduct. Okay, so thank you to ESDA for sponsoring today. Now I think you've heard enough of me. I'll end that poll, and it's time to introduce our panel. So instead of me telling you who they are, I'm going to go around our virtual table here. And I'm going to go from the top left of my screen, so the people there might be different on someone else's screen. I'm just going to introduce you, or say your name, and then you can introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do. And if you can also, just as a sort of a lead into the discussion, if you can highlight one or two issues that you believe need to be addressed in the education and training markets, whether, as I said, whether it's formal education or in the private education world. If we can do that as a start, and then from there, we'll get on to the questions. So enough of my speech. Let's get going. Interesting responses there to the panel. Thank you. Okay, I'll stop that. Not the panel, the poll, sorry. Okay, first on my screen, we have Errol Peace from BTC Training. Errol, would you like to unmute and just introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you to you, and good morning and greetings to all on the platform. I'm the Managing Director of BTC Training Africa Pty Limited, and a training company that's accredited with SACITA in compliance with SAQA, and also registered with CIRA. We do all the grade training and the specialized training under CIRA. I've personally been involved in training now for 42 years, not permanently, but in any positions that I've had from way back in the Johannesburg Traffic Department to where I am today. Every time I've been in some sort of position, I've been pulled into training. So in a nutshell, that's me. We do a lot of all the grade training, as I said, with CIRA, and we do the skills programs and the qualifications, 2 of the qualifications with SACITA. We also accredited with the wholesale and retail sector, and we do the retail qualification as well. Training and education in this country, I just believe we need to have a look at a professional body, and I'm speaking specifically from a security industry point of view, a professional body that looks at the training requirements that are going to add value and be applicable to 2021 security in South Africa. At the moment, we've got quite a minefield. We'll be looking at training with SACITA and CIRA. There's a lot of contradictions. The moratoriums that were entered to way back in 2005 and 2007 have now been withdrawn. So I just think we need to get back to basics and have a look at what is required in the industry in 2021 and have a professional body looking after that. And maybe not looking at the regulatory body as CIRA, but looking at a body that can look and have discussions with the industry and find out exactly what is requirement, the basic requirements, and the bottom line, which is going to add value, not only to the security company, but to South Africa and the general public in South Africa. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Errol. Next one on my screen is Professor Govender.
Oh, very good morning to you, Andrew, as well as our panelists and our viewers. I am a former Major General from the South African Police Service who joined the academia around about 2009. And I hold a PhD in security management specialization field within the criminology discipline. I'm presently a professor at the University of South Africa in the Department of Criminology and Security Science, where I'm involved in teaching and learning security-related subjects. I supervise masters and doctorate students. I conduct research. We're involved with community engagement with entities as well as the community at large and with academic citizenship. If we look at the situation in the new normal, things have changed from what we were doing and what we are now doing at the university. Just to add, I would like to mention that for training to be successful in South Africa, I think we need to actually look at education, training and development within specific categories. At the moment, there's a serious mix-up with education, training and development. It's anybody that's implementing and providing education, training and development. Remember that to be certified, you need to get an IA accredited education qualification. So education is a forte of universities, and I think we in South Africa, fortunate to have the University of South Africa being one of the only universities that has accredited qualification by the higher education institution, as well as in Africa. And we cater for the majority of students within the discipline of criminology and security sciences. My take is that, the new normal, we need to firstly strategize what our consumers require out there in terms of service. And once we've strategized, then we will know exactly what type of competencies and standards we are looking for. And then we need to do a proper skills audit to work around what these competencies and standards are needed for the security industry in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Michael, you're the next one on my list. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Morning, everyone. My name is Michael Tonkin. I'm the Director of Communications for UpEd, which is a educational technology company and is the parent company for Bugela Solutions, who we're representing today. And what we do is we offer business-to-business digital security training solutions. So basically, the concerns and when I reached out to Andrew to see if we could actually get this discussion going was to look at how training in South Africa is actually being beneficial to the various parties that are involved in the process. Looking at the National Development Plan, how effective our training is. I think the biggest concern is that the checkbox attitude that sometimes surrounds training within the industry, and whether or not we're actually upskilling our citizens and providing them with confidence and the ability to really do their job well, as well as doing that in a way that doesn't put undue financial strain on the businesses involved in that process, so that every person in every role player in the value chain is getting the best out of the process, which ultimately results in our country moving forward to better things.
Cool, thank you, Michael. Next up, we're privileged to have Major General Sanjay Soy. He's going to give us the Indian perspective on security in India. The General is the CEO of the Central Association of Private Security Industry, and he also heads up the Skills Development Council for Security in India. So, General, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thanks a lot for the invite, and good to see the South African perspective as well as to understand, because now since I'm the CEO of CAPSI, just to give you a small brief about Indian security scene, we are about 9 million security personnel in India and about 23,000 security agencies. And that's the kind of volume you can imagine, and its growth rate is very fast because it is directly linked to the economy, and approximately 20% growth rate is being seen per year. That's the kind of thing. As far as training is concerned, since that is a talk today, training is concerned, we have a National Skill Development Council made by the government as a council, and they have laid down the security training parameters right from the security guard to the director level. That is a national skill qualification frameworks are there, where everything is laid down, written down, and complete syllabus is made, and people have to clear that. Like a security guard has to undergo 160 hours of training, 100 hours of book written training, classroom training, and 60 hours of practical training. That's the kind of thing which is there for at every level. Recently, that security company owners also have to undergo 42 hours of training. So CAPSI is focusing on compliances of training, because what happened that all the guidelines are there, but when it comes to implementation, that's a problem in India, that at times people take shortcuts and the implementation is not up to the mark. So in CAPSI, our focus with the Ministry of Home Affairs is to ensure compliances, educate people, and lay down guidelines for establishment of training centers, what kind of minimum requirements for training centers. And also we have tied up with, like we tied up with JWAN, we have tied up with Security Association of South Africa, Security Institute of UK, and ISIR of USA. So these kind of MOUs are there, which we are looking at the global placement of security personnel from India. So that's the kind of thing which not only in India, restrict to India, and that is possible only if we raise the security training standards, only if we raise it to the level of global, which meet the global requirement. So that is our aim. We are working on that. We have tied up with some colleges and universities where we have started the undergraduation and graduation courses in security in the universities. So that is another thing which has happened in last 2 years. And recently we tied up with Rashtriya Raksha University. That is, Raksha means defense. That is security related industry, purely for security related industry, training the police personnel as well as the private security industry. Similarly, there's another university, Sardar Patel University, that also deals with security matters only. So this, with our effort with the government of India, this is also becoming curriculum in the universities, that security is taking a big leap in the education field. That's the thing I thought I'll share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting. It's a huge security market in India. Craig, Dr. Craig Donald, you're the next on my screen. So would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute, Craig.
Hi. Morning, Andrew. It's nice to see a number of familiar faces out there, and to see some faces of the people who I haven't met or interacted before, except by email. So it's good to be here. I come from an industrial organizational psychology background. So I found myself in security by accident. Having said that, I've been there for 30 years or so, and I think I've got a pretty good in-depth knowledge of what goes on. I studied in psychology, well, industrial psychology, and I'm an adjunct associate professor at ECU in in Perth in Australia. My speciality is human factors, and I look at control room, CCTV, X-ray screening, and I train people in surveillance and behavior analysis internationally for those people who have a lot to lose, either in terms of lives or in terms of expensive assets. And for me, there are two main aspects, and it's been reflected already. The first one is that we want to convey relevant knowledge and information to people in terms of theory or guidelines or how to go about stuff. And the second thing is we want to make sure that people are in a position to provide an operational response to issues that they're faced with. And that's possibly the more tricky one in today's climate, where we're doing a lot of online learning. So if you can transform that knowledge into operational responses, it makes a huge difference in service delivery. That's the bottom line. I think the fastest that I've had a response to training is in the first 10 minutes of a shift. One of the delegates went back to work and spotted an incident. So if we can get that kind of process going, I think that's really important in today's environment. So that would be my focus. If we have a look at online learning, we can get a lot of knowledge through to people very quickly and very efficiently. And how do we transform that into operational knowledge and responses? I think that's the key factor for me. That's it. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Greg. John, you're up next. Would you like to introduce yourself? Director General of the ISIO.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, panelists and everybody watching. My name is Johan Kirsten. I have two caps. The first one is that I'm the Director General of ISIO, the International Security Industry Organization, for the past 19 years. I'm also author of HIM, Human Investigation Management, which is endorsed by CAPSI from India, as well as SASA. So we've put together 9.15 million security practitioners on mission together. We have to be relevant. I think that's a very important issue. And the next few years is definitely a new norm, where we're dealing with life-impacting and deadly outcomes. So the practitioners that you're educating and that you're dealing with, if we understand the responsibility that the people that we're transferring knowledge to are dealing with life-impacting and deadly outcomes, we have to take this very seriously. And we have to change our methodologies on the way that we do things. So for biological threat security, not only do we actually consider technology, but we're also considering layering the manpower by skill sets for specific purpose. Daily, all practitioners are trying to outthink and outsmart criminals. That's exactly what we do. We have to know what we do. We have to be able to identify criminals and actually stop the crime. And there are millions of criminals that are thinking daily how to outthink and outsmart the security system, which is the technology as well as the manpower. So security success will depend on the level of situational awareness of the people on the ground and their reaction speed, which is, besides the knowledge, it's also the skill sets. In other words, one can get a certificate, but to be relevant, you actually have to have the soft skills. So we combined all of these things together. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Just as apropos nothing, John gave me access to his HIM course, and I have to say it's actually quite amazing. It's, when you see what the trainers actually do, it's kind of blows your mind as to what can be done if you have the practice and everything. But yeah, sorry about that, just a tangent there. Our last panelist to introduce, Ilse Dippenaar. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I'm the founder of UpEd, a digital learning platform. I'm a teacher by trade, I was, and so I am currently a founding member and the CEO of Bugela Solutions. And what we are offering is an online digital training system for me, as an educationalist, I listen to all the panelists, and I'm so impressed by this knowledge and experience that they are sharing. But for me specifically, I'm concerned with the learning process, and it is, as was mentioned earlier, that if the knowledge acquisition process is done properly and in a way that takes into account different learning modalities, the assessments are of a certain standard and what that should be, then that can translate into trainees who are able to respond appropriately. I have a special interest in the way in which we teach, especially mother tongue education in our specific context in South Africa. And so this is what this is my interest, especially as it has turned to security training, and especially in our South African context, digitally, as we call this new norm. I am concerned, speaking, and I've spoken to many people, and I've gone through some of the courses. I'm concerned with, as Michael mentioned, the box ticking, as was mentioned, especially by the government organizations, and so that's my biggest concern, is how many training companies are actually just putting people out there without being sure that that knowledge was internalized so that a correct response can happen in the right time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's actually a good introduction to what we want to talk about next. You know, what you said there is true. I mean, I'm actually a bit, I seem a bit distracted because we've got like half an hour left and we haven't even got to the first question yet. So I'm going to try and squash some of these questions together. Sorry to the panelists, it might be sort of two in one there. But, you know, the first question is, what do you see happening in the training industry or the education industry at the moment in South Africa in terms of individuals? Because there's lots of people who want to go on training thinking that having that piece of paper will give them a chance to get a job. And there's also companies who are always complaining about, you know, they don't have enough skilled people that they require, and they want to send people on training, and then there's issues with that as well. And then the main question I want to ask is about online training. I mean, in the whole new normal, for the lack of a better word, doing stuff online and virtually like we're doing now is becoming a norm. So what exactly do we need to do to ensure that when somebody does training, that's like Ilse said there, and I mean, Craig and John also mentioned it, that, you know, when they come out of that training course, they can actually do something. It's not just, you know, they filled in a few multiple choice questions and they get a certificate. So I will open that to the panel if you want to discuss that. Errol, as you've got your hand up, would you like to get the ball rolling?
Thank you very much, Andrew. What Ilse said with regard respond appropriately comes back to the whole question of adding value. How do we assess? And the big thing is, when we're looking at competency's got three sort of factors. They have the knowledge. They can apply the knowledge through skill, but then they have to have the experience. And from that experience, the big question, and I think the challenge for online training, is how does one assess competency? How can we put pen to paper and say, yes, the person is competent and can actually apply what they've learned in the field? Without an application value, I don't think training is worth anything, really. You can have a college full of knowledge. If you cannot apply what you've learned, well, what's the worth? And I think this is where a lot of companies come back to us as training providers and ask us, yes, we're going to put the guys through training. What is going to be the end result? what are they going to be able to apply? Now you've got legal compliance training, and you've got what I call good sense, good business sense training. You train a person to do the job. If you don't train the person, if we go back to the Labour Relations Act, and certain people like Dr. Craig and maybe Michael has got a better input, if you can prove that you haven't been trained, there is a grounds for reinstatement if you are dismissed on those grounds. So this whole application value and being able to respond appropriately, I believe, will be a major issue and a concern. I don't know, and Ilse can maybe mention this, how do you do that with digital learning? Thank you.
Whoops. Okay, I was muted there. Sorry. Thanks, Errol. Michael, you're the next on the list with your hand up.
Well, thank you. I'll keep this short. I think one of the things that we forget about as we start going into the adult training or educational space is that when we're training or teaching children, we actually are sort of not only giving them the information, but we're also teaching them how to think. We're teaching them how to learn, and that happens through sort of cyclical and variable stages where you're asking the same material in a variety of different ways. And I think that one of the ways that at least in the security training industry, they try to get that right is the use of both theoretical and practical, because it requires the transition of theoretical knowledge into practice. And admittedly, that's one of the difficulties around digital training. Because it's very difficult to assess like whether or not somebody knows how to, I don't know, for instance, clean a gun or check if a fire extinguisher is working properly. But what can be done is all of the other stages leading up to that is to actually take responsibility for teaching this person how to think, as well as providing them with the content that they need to know. And the way that one would do that would be through essentially something like variation theory, and taking into account the various learning modalities. So asking the same material in a variety of different ways, using a variety of different media to share that content.
Cool, thank you. Prof Govender, your hand is up as well.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. You know, for me, what is important to the new normal, although we are doing a lot of digital training at the university, but I would like to actually go direct to the point of my own personal experience. You know, a kinesthetic approach is vital for training, you know, where the candidate needs to use the audio visual processes in order to educate themselves. And I feel that a value to the security industry will be on-the-job training at this point in time, the new normal, where the main focus is on technology and more integrated type of training, because we are gone with the day where we used to say we need a guard to perform a specific duty. Our future now lies in the industry by looking for an incident response officer who is in a position to do all different types of work in the security field, not only guarding, but must be able to guard, patrol, be observant, get involved in surveillance, investigate, attend to incidents, assist in specific medical issues as they're assisting with the COVID-19 pandemic, access control measures at this point in time. I think the new norm wants us to look at an integrated service, and that is where we were supposed to go to with the 4IR and the AI. If we look at the robot and compare it to the individual employee, the robot is actually made to function in all these different facets. And that's what the new normal and the 4IR actually needs of us. So in the new normal, I feel that the best solution would be on-the-job training. Industries or companies should appoint skills development facilitators within their companies and look at how they could achieve their own standards and competencies by following their own skills audit and the needs of the integrated services they're offering. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Ilse, you've also put up your hand. This is like school. Are you muted, Ilse?
There, I'm back. Thank you very much. I do like the hybrid approach, and I saw on the poll that there's big support for a hybrid approach. And while I understand and so agree that on-the-job training is very good, I feel that a solid foundation always brings us so much further. So making sure that assessments that we have, diagnostic assessment, formative assessment, summative assessment, those also fulfill the compliance needs that we have with SIRA, CETA, and all of those. If we have that as valid and reliable, transparent, but also usable, because if we have assessment results that are usable, it will inform where someone can be best used, and it will also enhance the placement of people in areas where they are best suited. So yes, a hybrid approach and something like our program, like the app, does exactly that, but also on the job training with a proper and a solid foundation. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thanks. From what you guys have said, do we need to look at, specifically from what Prof. Govender said, do we need to look at some kind of internship process where you spend a day, or at home you do learn the theory, but then you go into the office or wherever you're working and you actually work with someone, a mentor or someone who can actually show you the ropes? I'm sorry, General Sanjay, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, what I fully endorse the views of the hybrid training, but in certain subjects, it depends on the level. Like, for example, biological training, which Joan is helping us out, it can be online, totally online. Or at the senior level, say director level, MD level, those trainings can be totally online. When we come to the grassroots level, then it has to be hybrid. I mean, something, a classroom, and then, because ultimately they are the one who are going to use the equipment, they are the one who is going to understand the equipment thoroughly. At that level, probably hybrid is the answer. That's my take.
I'm the one muted again. Thank you. John, you've got your hand up again. Ooh. You muted.
Sorry. In the security industry, we've got a philosophy and training methodology for online learning. We must keep in mind that we actually know what we're doing with regards to this, because we actually understand this, what we need to achieve. Our students have to react instinctively. When a person normally goes to a lecture or a workshop, within 16 days, if they only remember 2% of what they learned, it doesn't work. So along with Professor Govender's methodologies, what we do is actually work with, in such a way, we layer the information using multimedia techniques in order to embed the knowledge, so that instinctively we actually get a return. And so they have to physically experience applying the knowledge. This is where we actually integrate the criminology risk, the knowledge, as well as with regards to the skill sets, the soft skills. As I said, this is where we actually practically apply the actual knowledge. Now, the most important thing is that if any security practitioner here is naive to the fact that people lie and they hide information or volunteer information for their own agenda, then we must know that this is the most fundamental skill. We have to be able to identify risk. The actual person. It's not the bomb or the weapon that's a problem. It's human beings, and they lie. So we can't, practitioners on the ground cannot afford to be misled. So we utilize a certain skill set in order to read people, regardless of the culture, in order to get their attention and to on the ground. In other words, they have to apply something that's important to them, because people lie to them, not only at work and criminals, but also at partners and children and who knows what. So we utilize, these are real life skills that we're working with. And we actually combine that with criminology knowledge, criminology risk knowledge. And we actually have a learning process. So we actually can measure the results of situational awareness as well as critical thinking. See, in order to outthink and outsmart, you've got to be able to think out of the box and in the box. That's why in criminology risk, we actually understand, we actually not only can define it, but we actually can prove it by actually apprehending criminals or getting rid of bullies or blackmail and extortion. So we actually understand this. We mustn't discount what the security industry can provide to educationalists that are actually trying to do using online devices. And yes, we actually do go into AI for criminology risk investigation. So we utilize all these skills together because it has to be a package. But everything at the end of the day is relative to now. And now we're dealing with an active, mutating, biological threat that is changing at a moment's notice. That means the entire world has to be inoculated at the same time with the same potency of vaccine. That means that it calls for the education and using devices and different mythologies in order for the entire world of security, every single practitioner in the world has to come together, because we're doing the job on the ground. We're actually taking temperature, we're managing the flow of people, and we're ensuring the hygiene. But we're investing all the money and the manpower to do this. The security industry can contribute in so many different which ways to many faculties, even to online learning designers, because we actually understand muscle memory. We understand the things that's required for this particular sector of industry. Thank you.
Thanks. We've got a few hands up in the attendees as well. I'll get to you in a second. I see Errol, you have put up your hand again.
Thanks, Andrew. Just please allow me just to comment on what Juan has said. Like you, I've been very fortunate to be able to have gone through the HIM. And it's a life skill. And what the course does is, as you're going through it, you're upskilling yourself. If you do it today and you do it tomorrow you're going to be more skilled. And you get to get more insight into the whole thing, which at the end of the day is upskilling me personally, but that skill is being transferred to my employer. Now, I think the employer needs to take cognizance of this and invest in the upskilling of that person, because at the end of the day, the result of that is going to be an improved security officer on the ground, being able to handle all the threats that's being faced today, which will impact not only the employer, but the general community. So there are certain courses like that, which you will know are very, very good when it comes to online security. I'm sure there's many other training courses out there that can do the same. But I think people just need to be aware of what do you want the end result to do? What is your response going to be? Respond to it and the application value. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, I see that your hand is up. But before I get to you, I just want to go over to Dominique. We've got some questions from the attendees. Dominique?
Good morning. Terry Henderson has said there are plenty of NQF registered training in the security and fire industry. Why don't training providers get registered with the DHET and offer training to conquer legal competency? All NQF courses integrate knowledge, practical and workplace elements. My second question I have, which is from Colin van Til, the South African Fire Development Association, says, as Errol says, application of skills is so important. There should therefore be workplace training and sign off by competent people. In the fire detection training, we also do a portfolio of evidence which has to be signed off and submitted before the certificate of competence is given.
Thank you. Does any of the panel want to have respond to either of those questions? Okay, if not, then we'll leave that for food for thought for later on. Michael, if you'd like to... Oh, sorry, Errol.
Sorry, I would love to register with the Department of Higher Education, which I did 4 years ago. Have I been accredited, registered yet? No. The red tape that's been involved, the encyclopedia of information that one has to submit, the changing of the goalposts every 2 months, I am still not registered. And I'm not doing it alone. I'm working through a consultant. So yes, I'd love to be registered with the Department of Higher Education. But it's a time-consuming factor. Where they are at the process at the moment, I couldn't tell you. The consultants can't help me. COVID has been the excuse now for the last 3 years. Way back 2019, we never had COVID, but it's still being blamed on COVID. So yes, I'd love to. Thank you. So not all training providers have been fortunate enough to get to that position.
Thank you. Michael, you had a comment. I'd also like to just sort of move on to the next question while we're here. I know that Vukile has kind of an online training program designed for the security industry. I think it's fairly new. I'm not sure you can talk about that. But what I would like to ask you in terms of this is how you make sure that through your online, and I think it's via an app as well, system, you actually manage to do what we were saying before and you know, get operational, as Craig was putting it, operational knowledge to the people. And then I'd like, once you've finished, I'd like to actually just volunteer Craig to speak again. I know that in your sort of your operator training, you focus on, you know, in-person training. And I'd like your opinion on why, you know, that is in, you know, from your perspective, and I mean, it's a narrow field that you're training in, but why you think that's better, and if you think that it could be translated in terms of like an online course or online training or something like that. Michael, if I can go to you first.
Sure. Hi. Just a quick add on to what Errol was talking about. One of the things that we've noticed is the excess of bureaucracy around compliance, and the lack of oversight in terms of quality of learning. And I understand that initially the bureaucracy or the compliance requirements are to try and ensure some kind of environment where we know that when a person comes out of training, they actually are trained. But that sort of has turned into a little bit of a monster. And I think Errol has experienced firsthand what that's like. So I think to go on to what you were asking about, transferring the applicable knowledge to trainees. I think, look, I'm young and my world sort of exists within a digital space, but I'm also not. I'm not. I realize that sort of digital solutions are sort of like a dirty word, because of their popularity at the moment, and I don't think that technology in and of itself does a better job than people in any way. But what we can do is we can utilize technology to do the best possible job while integrating that with humans. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background on what Bugela does is we have a learning platform that's not necessarily focused on content. We do have CERA aligned training material, but our learning platform is more focused on the learning process. And so it's about delivery of content or knowledge in such a way that we can ascertain whether or not a person has actually learned. So the idea is guaranteed learning. So for instance, Ilse briefly, I think Ilse actually, she lost her connection, so she's not on at the moment. But so we have diagnostic assessments, so essentially baseline testing for whatever content we have on the platform. We then have formative assessments and summative assessments. And the model that we work on with our platform is that of an excellence model. So it's not a case of, oh, you've got, in case of the national education system, okay, you passed with 33%, therefore you can, you know what you're talking about. It can be changed depending on what a client would want, but we often use a 100% knowledge standard. So there's a actual learning process where a trainee or student or whatever will be exposed to the content, will then go through a series of exercises in application of that theoretical knowledge, and then through an assessment process will be tested on that knowledge. But then also, if they don't get 100% for that, they will then get fed back to the exact information in which they didn't get it right. So through variation theory and through this like learning circle, we ensure that they understand what it is that they've been learning. Now, granted, we do not have a practical aspect of it because it is an online digital learning solution. And obviously the practical element is important, but practical application of knowledge doesn't come until the knowledge is firmly rooted in a person. And it's not just about the recall of information, but rather the understanding of it such that it becomes part of that person's wisdom or body of knowledge to reference. And so we concern ourselves with that process so that we can ensure that is as good as it can be. I think I may have covered all of your questions. Please let me know if I missed anything and if anybody has any comments about that.
Yeah, no, I think you did. We've got a couple of hands up. So Craig, if I can go to you next, and then to Prof. Govender, and then to John, sorry.
Andrew, there were a couple of points, and maybe I'll just raise a couple of things very quickly. I think the ability to go on to courses online has been amazing in the past 18 months. I mean, people have got qualifications in all sorts of areas that otherwise they probably wouldn't have even been into. And if I'm in an organization and I see somebody working for me doing that kind of stuff, that's got to have value. And I think, in a sense, we have all these training institutions and bodies and regulatory bodies, but the bottom line is, does the organization find value in the training? And that's really where we should be coming from. So if somebody has been expanding their repertoire of skills through any kind of online learning, I think that's fantastic. Having said that, they need to be able to use those skills in the organization, and people at work are the best ones to actually see that, or doing some kind of testing, or like the old apprentice test system, you know, people could see whether the apprentice was actually doing the work. So I think those kind of components are all really important. From my side, I do a lot of experiential learning in terms of behavior analysis. And one of the things that I do is I adhere to the principle, and we've got all these educational theories, but the principle was tell, show, and do. And if you can get through that process, then we're finding results coming through at the end of the day. And the more you can recognize that, the more that it's recognized by the organization and the people themselves who feel empowered, I think that's a really important aspect. I've done WebEx-based learning for an international organization in Argentina, where we had the additional issue of translation. And surprisingly, it was pretty effective. But give me a choice, and every time it will be a classroom learning for my kind of stuff, because you learn together, you have a lot of interaction with people, I challenge them, and it's a group learning experience, which is very difficult to get in a Zoom-based environment or anything like that. So I have done online training, but my preference, still, end of the day, is classroom, because people walk out and I can test them in that room and see how they can apply their concepts and correct them easily. And people themselves actually get feedback from others and come out better at the end of the day. But if your online learning results in that kind of experience, where people get assessed on results that they're doing on projects or whatever, then you come in through to the same kind of effect. Mine's just a particular niche area, I think. But as long as you've got some kind of practical assessment where people go out and do the stuff and they can be evaluated by others, that for me is the best way of recognizing training. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Greg. Prof. Govender, your hand was up there.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. You know, talking about digitalized training and online training, the new normal has reinforced that. I mean, many people are working from home these days due to COVID. But if you look at teaching and learning, you know, the focus is on knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And I actually come from online distance education space, and I've got a lot of exposure to that, and we've been through it far before the COVID-19 pandemic, and we know the ins and outs, being one of the leading institutions in the country doing online teaching and digital learning, etc. And I must stress that, you know, there has to be human interaction when it comes to security industry employees. There must be human interaction. The key is communication. The key is what is your attitude towards the people, the customers. In your communication, you should be marketing your entity. You should be marketing what you can offer as a service. So for me, working within the classroom environment, being experienced there, for me, working in the field, doing experiential training, doing on-job training, and now doing distance education, online training, I found that human interaction is key, and on-the-job training and classroom training is the key for the future. It's really very important for people to interact with other humans, interact with instruments that they'll be working with, the artifacts, etc. So I think the bottom line is, if we want to satisfy our customers, we need to send somebody with a correct profile out there to address the needs of the customers. Thank you.
Thank you. John, you've got your hand up as well.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to tail off Professor Govender. As I said before, it's not the bomb that causes issues, it's actually people. And this is how we actually practicalize it. Now, besides the tailing threat of COVID, we also have new crime related to that threat, as well as new crime related to the outcome of that threat, which is when there's more criminals because people are desperate. When people lose their jobs, when they can't find work, they'll do anything to get an oxygen bottle or to get an asthma pump. So you must know that the whole dynamic has completely changed. So we've got to actually find the new crime, besides obviously considering the elevated existing crime. And we predicted all the way through to the actual anarchy. So from 2020 in February, we actually warned that certain countries were going into anarchy, and we actually saw this thing roll out a short while ago in South Africa. So we're talking about real life stuff. In other words, when people are interacting on the ground, it's got to be within seconds that they actually got to work. So how do you teach a non-tangible in a tangible way, utilizing digital media as well as physical interaction? How do you blend and both those two objectives? And we have to do it. And we've got to be relevant with the knowledge. So regardless of the device and the platform that you've got, because yes, we do monitor the activity online. We know exactly how long they spend somewhere, on what page, for how long, and etc. And we've got the format that they correspond with, and they actually give us their comprehension of what they understand. So we can actually assess. And we also can, we actually know if the students are lying or if they're hiding information. So we understand what we're doing. The point is that I'm trying to get to is that for the next years, not just 2 years or 1 year. Now, we have to be relevant with information, get it to the industry, to the people, to get them enthusiastic, know what they're doing. They've got to have the right attitude, because they're the ones on the ground that are actually doing the job, and they're dealing with life impacting and deadly outcomes. So the information, the speed of information, the way we train it, the way we embed it so that it becomes part of the instinct, we understand these things. This is what we actually have to do. And this is how we got it. And this will change the way of training and education for till the end of time. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Ilse, your hand is up, so we'll go to you next, and then Major General Sanjay will come to you after that. Ilse, would you like to comment?
I'd like to comment just on what what Craig said with regards to the teaching space, and I so agree that one-on-one, the social brain needs to be activated. That helps so much with learning. I think just if we look at the space, and this is more putting out there so that we also acknowledge who is it that comes into this industry. If I'm talking about an entry-level industry, these are people with a grade 9 certificate, and often people with not a lot of money. So going into a training course for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, financially, that is very onerous. And that's the one thing that I feel that online learning does give. And while not ideal or perfect in any way, I do feel that in the light of the National Development Plan and of growing our economy and growing our industry, that if we can address those people's need for training, if we can give them an opportunity to get proper training so that they can go into the industry and build a career for themselves, then that would be most ideal. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thanks. General Sanjay?
Yeah, I'll just bring out quickly certain additional points which I thought I'll share with you all. The one is both angles I'll highlight. One is in the physical training or in the hybrid training, when it is classroom training, one more thing which is very important, peer learning. You learn from your friends, learn from each other, and when the questions are asked, which is generally missing in the online training. One is slightly conscious, and at times one is not so open. And again, and another thing is that the personality of the instructor, which plays, or teacher, plays a major role in the development of the student or the learner. However, when we talk of the online training, the advantages are you get the best instructor from across the globe. The geography is not the limit. And second thing is it is much more economical. The people can afford it. The numbers can be large. The classrooms can be anywhere and everywhere. And the access to vast knowledge, the kind of knowledge which we can share, like we are having training with Joan on the biological training, he's sitting in South Africa, and people are getting trained in India. So we are getting the best knowledge from across the globe, from the best instructors at much economical rate. That's the advantage of online training. That's one.
Thank you. Okay, we're actually out of time, which is, I don't know, it seems to me we've just started, but I'd like to, if I may, go around the table again, or around the virtual table, I suppose it is, and just ask everyone just quickly if you can sort of give your opinion and say, you know, if you could wave a magic wand and change any aspect of the training and education environment right now, you know, that would actually have results and improve in, you know, the skills companies have and the skills companies can create within themselves, what would that be? I know there's lots of things we've already mentioned, but maybe if you can come up with sort of 1 or 2 things which you think will make a big difference if things changed, you can, yeah, just sort of highlight that before we end off. I'm just going to go from my top left again, and our top left right now, Prof. Govender. Is there something you'd like to add there?
Great, thank you very much. I think the most important thing is, communication, attitudes. That is where our business will be built on. And I think very important is people out there need to understand that the security industry is there to offer a specific service, and that service is going to be done professionally. They are looking for professional service, so they pay for professionalism. So that is my take on that. Communication is the key, attitude is the key towards professionalism. Thank you.
Thank you. That's actually very interesting. Michael, can we ask you for a comment?
Sure. I think that particularly within South Africa and or any country where the majority of the influx to an industry is from a lower income bracket, and that obviously has an impact going up the value chain. I think that there needs to be some kind of solution where we're able to drop the cost of training, but improve the quality of training. And that may sound like a little bit of a scenario where you have your cake and you eat it too, but it's also a necessity. So basically, improving effectivity and efficiency while improving affordability, and that's without being a little bit cheeky and trying to sort of plug what we do. That's essentially where we aim at, is trying to provide that.
Okay, thank you. Next on my screen, Jean.
I might have found my glasses. Sorry about that. I think we're now in a place where we're actually changing the whole mythology of security and criminology, because what we now is in a state of profit protection instead of loss prevention, because the people that sign the check, the accountants, have to allocate funds, and they've got to actually understand that we're there to profit protect their businesses. In the security industry, I think many security companies lost between 20 to 30% of their customers. Every single security company can't get paid in time and on time like they used to. So we actually have to change our discussion and our conversation with the end users for them to actually understand total profit protection, because then we're going to be able to access the funding for training. So we have a specific presentation that we actually utilize, because we understand exactly the problems that they're experiencing and how they can actually retain the integrity of their profits, because they have to avoid reputational damage and many other different issues that are taking place as we're going around now. The second thing is that when it comes down to the training, we've got practice, the guards are actually on the ground. So we've got to train and mentor from the security managers on the ground on a continuous basis. Also, we have to understand that for them to learn, we can use simulators, sure, but it's on the ground that we actually do the training. So within 5 minutes before shift, during lunch or after lunch, and we actually direct their thought pattern towards looking for specifics, we're actually going to be able to embed the knowledge even more so. As I said, we've got to have more eyes on the ground, all eyes on the ground and all hands on deck, because we're now in a total different situation to what we used to do. What we used to do, what used to train, how we used to, it doesn't exist anymore. We're now in a new norm, in a different which way. And so we've got to actually move from here, get the money in and choose the right tools in order to train and practically apply what we know on the ground. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Craig, if I can pick on you next, just for a closing comment.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for having the forum. I find it very informative. I think for me, we can't rely on government. That's really one of the bottom lines. They get in the way rather than anything else at this stage. But South Africans are very resourceful with coming up with ideas and implementing them. So we need ways coming from the industry and coming from the users of personnel of security, in terms of companies, of how you can encourage the development of people And I come across people who are grade 3 guards who are absolutely fantastic, who should be running organizations in the future, and yet they're stuck there just because they haven't had the potential to move up. So I think we need to have a look at ways of encouraging mobilization empowerment at lower levels. And I think we need to get credibility established of the training that we do through performance in the job. That's really the bottom line. And the more we can do that, the more successful the industry can be. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Ilse, closing comment from you?
I think as I was listening to everyone's comments, I was so impressed with the vast knowledge and experience on this panel. And I almost want to, if I could wave my magic wand, I want to add it to Errol's voice that he had at the beginning, where he said we need a body of people, practitioners, people who stand in this every single day, who understands not only the content, but the salient points, what you need to have a successful business and a successful offering. And I almost would like to see people like the people on this panel to come together, to put together their knowledge and their experience for the betterment of this industry, which we lived through the riots firsthand. We could hear the gunshots. So I feel that I have such an appreciation for the security industry because of feeling it so close to me. And imagine if all of this comes together in something for the greater good of the country and the people in it. Thank you.
Thanks. Errol, a last word from you, and then we'll go to General Sanjay.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Well, Ilse's just stolen my thunder. Because if I had that magic wand, thank you, Ilse. If I had that magic wand, I would implement a professional body in the security industry yesterday with key role players who know what they are talking about. And I look at the IISSM of India. They're running weekly courses run by professionals in the industry applicable to the industry. And I really think we should be having a look at our clients. Who are our clients? Our clients are our learners and students. And I think we'll all agree that we need to empower them through the training, get them development, but offer quality training at a cost-effective rate. These poor guys on the ground can't afford 3,000 Rand to do a grade E registration with CIRA. So we need to have a look at that. But the professional body in the security industry, that would be my wave of the magic wand. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Errol. General Sanjay, maybe we can end off with a perspective from your side of the world.
Thank you so much, Andrew, in fact, for the invite. It has been very, very insightful discussion. And
thank you for joining us.
I felt that the issues are common, whether it is India or South Africa, especially for security industry. And with the new norm, if you see this, that online training is the thing which is happening and which has to happen, it is, which I brought out is economical, it's affordable. And in India also, the people who are joining the security industry are generally from marginalized, this thing, economically, they are not so well off. They are the ones who are joining the security industry. So cost factor makes a lot of difference. And if we can deliver quality, which most of our speakers have agreed to, that quality at an economical rate is the key. And thank you so much. It was very, very insightful. I learned a lot and I mean, thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, other panelists.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you guys. Before we do the closing, there are just two more comments. Dominic is going to, or comments from the attendees that Dominic is going to let us know about. So, Dominic.
Thank you. Mr. Terry Henderson has again said, funding is available for learners from the SETA once courses are registered. Also, skills levy recovery is available for companies. Certain aspects of the online training can be incorporated into existing NQF training. We have another comment from Jabs Mohammed. Companies should also invest in security internally instead of depending completely on outsourced security. There must be an element of in-house security to manage the outsourced security in an ongoing basis. The company must also be able to manage all security service providers with in-depth knowledge of the requirements of the security industry so that the company is receiving the services it is paying for. Professional in-house managing of outsourced security is essential. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominique. I think that last comment, we could have another hour discussion just going over that. But unfortunately, we already 15 minutes over time, so I'm going to close down or close now. I want to say thank you. I think we need to do more of these and more, maybe focus on more, sort of narrow the focus of the discussions in future. But thank you very much for the panel. We've had some sort of, we have a very high level panel, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us and to give us your opinions and chat with us today. I think there's a lot of food for thought for future discussions and editorials and things like that. So once again, thank you. And to our attendees, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have managed to learn something or come away with something. We have one of the polls that are open. If we have your email address, we will send your details to the various members of the panel for them to get hold of you. Excuse me. I also in the chat put my email address. So if some of you, or if your email isn't, I know a lot of people logged in as the same person. I think there's a problem sending out the link. But if your email address, we don't have your email address, you can email me directly and I will or forward your email to the right people who can then get in touch with you. But apart from that, I just want to say thank you again to everyone for attending. And again, especially to our panelists, I really do appreciate you guys taking the time and sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. So until next time, thank you very much, and hope everyone has a good day.
Thank you.